Um, Good afternoon and welcome to the Southern Pines work session. I'm calling this meeting to order. Before we start, I want to say that your council has attended the Whitehall discussions this morning and this afternoon. It's a very exciting time for our town and for our community. And please attend if you can so that you can have some input and some understanding as to what amazing things that we have before us. Now I'm turning the meeting over to Mr. Parsons for the town manager comments, and I'm not sure where one of our council members
Thank you,
is.
Mayor. Since you're going to pull me off topic immediately, just as a matter of clarification, your council attended as individuals to
Yes. Oh, yeah,
meet
we
with,
did.
and it was not a meeting that Evie's back there wondering where the notice was
No.
for
It was
so-
one and Taylor was in another
Yeah,
room, and yeah.
So that having been said, I'd like to begin by welcoming Mac McCarley to his first official meeting as town attorney. Mac spent some pretty significant time 2 days last week with myself and various members of staff starting to get up to speed. I'd also recognize that Mr. Gill is still in attendance. As council is aware, he'll be attending your September agenda and council meetings. And a number of the items on the agenda this afternoon were things that he had some involvement in. So we've got, at least for one meeting, 2 attorneys today. With that said, just very quickly on your agenda, you do have a number of action items on this agenda. For the most part, they're typical of the types of action of items you see at a work session in the way of written decisions and simply beginning the annexation processes. Beyond that, however, there will be some discussion around the comprehensive long-range plan, and Mr. Grieve will have some comments about that, and then we'll be asking you for 2 separate votes relative to kicking that project off. So with that, I will go ahead and turn it back over to you, Mayor, so we can begin working through the action items.
Okay, very good. The first one is Bowles expansion, which is right across the street. We need approval. I think Pam did a good job explaining all that at the last one. So we're just accepting or not accepting the written decision by the staff. So pleasure of the council on 3A.
Go for it. I don't have it in front of me.
I'll make a motion to accept the written decision for SU-04-22 as prepared by the town staff.
Second.
Pleasure of the council.
Aye.
Wonderful. This was kind of a two-sided thing because I'm the one that brought this to the attention. Our Southern Pines Rotary Club, we have a project in South America, and this is the authorization of donation of our surplus property. And it's wonderful when organizations can work together. So I need the approval of considering resolution 1020 and 1021 authorizing the donation of the town surplus property, which is listed.
I'll make a motion to approve resolutions 1020, 1021 regarding authorization donation of town property.
May I ask a question first? Thank you. Do we have a responsibility with surplus property to put it up for open bid?
With some surplus property, yes, that is the case. You may recall, I think we did one recently. You are able to do direct donations to nonprofit organizations. In the instance of the second item, that is actually equipment that we could not bid. That's either going to go to a landfill or it's going to leave the country because it's fire equipment that no longer meets the United States standards that would allow it to be used by any sort of organization here in the States. Attorneys and insurers kind of take care of that. It can, however, go south of the border to Mexico and help out one of their local agencies. So that one is very much an instance where there isn't even a bidding process or surplus process available other than this type of transaction.
Okay, thank you.
Second.
Pleasure of the council.
Aye.
Aye.
Hi, Taylor. We're doing the authorization of the surplus property. Aye, okay, we got them. All righty, welcome. We're at 3C, by the way. This is to investigate the first step of the annexation process, approximately 2.32 acres on the southeast corner of Brucewood and South Carlisle.
Be the Sand Hills Pediatric site,
Right,
if that helps
yeah,
out.
Yeah, it had Bill Stewart's name on it. Discussion, questions, approval. This is step one, boys and girls.
Yes, you'll see in your next packet a request to set a hearing, and then that hearing will take place in in October, at which point following the hearing, you'll be able to approve the annexation.
I'll move to adopt the resolution directing the town clerk to investigate petitions received for the voluntary annexations of properties as defined in the submitted written meets and bounds descriptions under AX-0422.
I'll second.
Pleasure of the council.
Aye.
Aye.
And this one's going to take a couple of steps. As he just said, this is the Community Advisory Committee for the Long Range Plan Project. It's a two-step process. Got D1 and D2. So the first is the adoption of an ordinance to create the Special Project Advisory Committee to assess with the creation of a new comprehensive long-range plan. So I need an approval of that or discussion or what?
I believe BJ's also got just a staff report to kind of
Okay.
walk you through these two.
I had Rachel,
Oh,
but it's,
I could be wrong. Maybe Rachel's doing it.
y'all fight over this one. Oh, I got two, a twofer.
All right, good afternoon, council. Hi. So as you know, City Explained has been hired as the consultant for the comprehensive long-range plan update process. And some exciting news tomorrow and this week is actually City Explained's first visit to Southern Pines. So I'm really excited for this process to get started. Matt Noonkester and Ben Hitchings will be in town. They'll get here, well, Matt's actually going to arrive tonight, but they'll get here tomorrow morning. They'll be here throughout Thursday. So as far as the schedule for this week, so far we have a tour with consultants lined up for tomorrow morning, and we also have stakeholder interviews with established community groups that will happen throughout the visit. Then on Wednesday, August 24th, from 4 to 7 p.m., the Bring Your Own Questions event is happening, and that's at Southern Pines Growler Company, and it's just a casual way for the community to come out and meet the consultants and kind of talk with them and ask any questions anybody might have, and just to learn more about the CLRP process. Then on Thursday, August 25th, from 6 to 8 p.m., the first Community Advisory Committee meeting will happen, and BJ will talk a bit more about that. But I do want to note that this visit is just the first chance to meet the City Explained team, so they will be here several more times throughout the CLRP process. This is really just a visit for City Explained to kind of come to Southern Pines for the first time, get acclimated with the community, and start meeting some stakeholders in the area.
Hate to interrupt, is everyone on the council made an appointment?
Yes,
Okay, good.
separate appointments.
Yeah, just make sure. We don't, no.
And on that note, some other City Explain interactions that will happen throughout the rest of the year is on September 9th, there is a day just for virtual stakeholder interviews for the branding portion of the project. So I'm working on getting that lined up. And then the next in-person visit from City Explained will be September 20th through 22nd. And that trip is for stakeholder interviews for the market analysis portion of the project. But also on September 20th, the second exciting community event's happening from 4 to 7 p.m. It's called the Community Ideas Exchange Workshop. It will be held at the Douglas Center, and it will include several interactive stations for the public to come out and learn more about the CLRP process and provide input. And then on October 1st is Autumn Fest, and the CLRP will have a booth there.
Oh, good.
So those are some next few events that we have lined up. But also I did want to note that I have an email list for the CLRP. So if anybody would like to join my email list and get weekly updates about the process, please email me. My email address is rman@southernpines.net.
All right.
Are council members automatically on your email list?
Yes, you are.
Okay, thank you.
All right, and I'll talk real quick about the Community Advisory Committee. One of the things that Matt recommended in the contract and what they've had good luck with in previous long-range planning processes in other communities is to have a group other than the planning board which can act as a sounding board for the consultants. The reason it's other than the planning board is because the planning board signs on for one meeting a month for 12 months, and they usually and continue to have their hands full with a variety of normal current planning applications. And so to ask them to also sign on for additional meetings can sometimes be difficult for planning board members. So the steering committee, it's sometimes called a steering committee. It's really a sounding board. In this particular consultant's experience, they need to have 4 meetings over the course of a year to, again, function as a sounding board. Their recommendations or their advice is not really taken above or below or anything else, anybody else's participation. It's just a quick group of citizens that they can go to when they want to talk about something. They put things on a list to get ready to go to that meeting. So that was one of many, obviously, outreach methods that are outlined in the contract. When we had one of our initial meetings, I said to the consultant, I said, all right, creating a group like this, I'm aware from many previous experiences, it can be kind of a thing, and people get interested and people get very involved. I said, what's the best experience you've had with this where it was the least much of a thing, if you will? And what he said was, actually he had good luck in a previous jurisdiction where the group was created by advertising it, letting anybody who wanted to submit an application to be on it, and then having a group pick out the members. And in this particular case, the planning board, because obviously we value the planning board's input, we work with the planning board a lot, but because this group, kind of people wonder, like, was this group like the planning board, or what's the relationship between the planning board and this group? We thought that having the planning board review the applications and look at them would be a good way for the planning board to be involved in the creation of this group. In this particular case, it's called the Community Advisory Committee. So I said, man, that sounds pretty good. If you've had good luck with that in the past, let's give that a shot. So we went ahead and advertised it. We put together a flyer with Jessica and Rachel's help, put together a really nice flyer. We had a banner that went on the main town website for about 2 weeks. It went out for 2 weeks. Why only 2 weeks? Well, because we're trying to move forward and we got a whole bunch of foundation to build before we can start assembling the house. And you guys have talked a lot about the need we've all talked a lot about the need to get the CLRP updated to work on other stuff. So we put it out there for about 2 weeks. It went on Facebook. It was, we have my email list that I've been sending stuff out to for a long time, went out to that group. A banner was on the town website. It was in the newspaper twice. There was a call for folks to apply. And so by the end of the closing date, by 5 o'clock, it was 2 Thursdays ago, it was the planning board agenda meeting, we had received 39 applications. And that was great because we thought, well, if we need 15 and we get 16 applications, we got a pretty good idea, kind of limited. So the planning board took a week with them between their agenda meeting and their regular meeting, and they reviewed all of them. They did a great job because they came with spreadsheets and notes and all kinds of stuff. And the way we went through them at the planning board meeting, Diane Westbrook had like,
Loves an Excel spreadsheet.
I tell you what, she had multiple Excel spreadsheets. She had,
See her password. She's got 5 pages of Excel. Her grandchildren laugh at her a lot.
So what they did is that everybody came with a list of 20 names that they felt, because they knew they needed 12 to 15 recommended folks. They came with a list of 20 names, and then they started to read off their lists, and they went down. And if you think about the math behind it, it actually worked out pretty well. First of all, nobody who was ultimately recommended for appointment wound up getting a unanimous 6 votes. It was pretty remarkable, actually. There were 2 individuals that had 5 and a whole bunch that had 4. And everybody that had 5 and everybody that had 4 was appointed. And then they looked over the list after they had compiled it, and everybody on that list, there were people that didn't want them and people that did want them, and it was a great discussion. It was very transparent, very open. It was in furtherance of the stated goals of diversity, equity, and inclusion. There was a lot of conscious thought put into socioeconomic diversity, age diversity, gender diversity, racial diversity. And so in the end, they actually had 14 people. They looked and they said, we got one more slot. And they looked at who of the flyer that went out, who we were looking for, who was least represented, and they made one last appointment and to come up with a list of 15. They talked about it. It was, like I said, Rachel and I just kind of sat and watched. We had no influence on it. There are people on the committee that I would love to work with and prefer not to work with, and that's that. That's exactly how diversity works. That's great. I mean, it's wonderful. And so in the end, that list of 15 was forwarded to you guys. Evie was in the room that night, so she did a piece about it that was released online. And so the names of the 15 did get out before we were able to send out an email letting them know that they were even like pre-appointed or selected for recommendation. But that's okay. That's again, I will say this, we had a look, because the planning board had discussed whether or not this could be done in they could do this in a closed session. And under North Carolina statute, a public body discussing qualifications for appointment to another public body has to be done in an open session. And of course, all the applications are public record once they're submitted. So I think I've
Alternate by any chance? Do you need an alternate? I don't know.
now, we have 15 recommended names. They did not come up with a 16th for an alternate.
Okay.
I think I just checked all the mental boxes I had of things I wanted to make sure to mention to you guys about the group. And I can scroll down one page when I get back to my computer, and you'll see the list of the names. In fact, let me do that real quick. And I know some of these people. I do not know some of these people. The same was true. The applications, by the way, that people submitted were not just name and address. The applications did require a good paragraph about why you want to be in this group, what you feel you bring to the group, and it was that information that the group used to try to check as many boxes for diversity, equity, and inclusion as they could. So yeah, this is the planning board's recommended slate of folks to be on the community advisory committee. And again, I guess at this point, the only thing I would add in conclusion is really that this is sometimes referred to as a steering committee, sometimes it's a community advisory committee. The consultant said, look, it's a sounding board. They just need somebody to go to be able to speak with a group of citizens, and this would be helpful. So,
You ready for questions?
yeah, please.
So first of all, I admire greatly what you have done and what the planning board's done. I mean, I think it was really a thoughtful process, and I think that it has people on this list who will disagree with each other, which is the beauty of democracy. So thank you for all your work on that. My specific question to you is there a voice regarding historic preservation on the current list?
Yes, Lynn Anderson. Lynn Anderson was on our Historic District Commission and is an architect and speaks architecture and historic preservation.
Yeah, he's
Thank you.
our historian.
Okay. And I didn't know, I remember looking at the original criteria and including some of each, and I wasn't sure if that was one of the things that we
Yeah.
were including. Okay. No, I think what you all did is pretty spectacular, and I admire the planning board. I'm a big fan. I love my planning board T-shirt, please. But no, you guys did a great job, and thank you for looking through it, and thank you for a balanced group, and thank you for a group who really will go at each other at times. So that's great.
I'm going to wait till the end.
You waiting for my other question? You waiting
Yeah,
for
I'm gonna
zap?
wait till- no, I'm
You waiting for
gonna
the zapper? I don't have
Because
one.
what I'm going to wait till the end, and if it all goes wrong, it's my fault.
Absolutely. And I would like to retain the ability to blame you at the end, right?
My
Okay.
daughter was a coach with a bullhorn. Would you like to borrow that if she still has it?
But if it went really, really well, and if you like this,
It was going to be
by
our
golly,
idea,
Rachel
right.
did it all.
Well done, both of you.
Yeah, y'all did a great job. That was a lot of thoughtful effort. I do appreciate that, being a sociology major. I know how hard it is to get a diverse group and the questions you have to ask, and trying to put together a puzzle that is kind of an interesting puzzle. It isn't always going to come together as this cohesive kumbaya group, but that's what it's all about. We need thoughts and views from lots of different people.
Yeah.
So,
The planning board really, our planning board, they had a week to look at these. They really had to buckle down and review a lot of qualifications and try to shuffle pieces around and put a lot of, and they were very committed to diversity, equity, and inclusion, as we've spoken about from the beginning. And I think this list really is representative of that. Again, it is a pretty diverse group. And
Were the ones that didn't make the cut, so to speak, are they getting a note from anyone saying, thanks for applying, or just, okay, thank you?
Yeah, that's a great question. And some of them actually are we're going to ask to come to stakeholder meetings simply because the knowledge they have, what they may have brought to this
Right.
group is really important for the consultant to hear on multiple sides of many issues. So not only will we email them thanks, but we will also contact them and let them know about future meetings and future opportunities to participate. And that's important because, yeah, we don't want them to feel that, we don't need you. Because again, these are 39 people who have taken the effort to say, I'll help.
I think unless they opt out, they automatically are on Rachel's list that she mentioned to start the meeting, so.
Okay, good. That was my concern, because I don't,
Well done.
Yeah, you don't want people to go, did I make it? Did I not make it? You know, they don't care, kind of thing. That's not who we are. So that's, yeah, okay.
And for 2 actions, you missed the simplest thing of all that.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
60D requirement that they actually create the committee before making the appointments.
Do we actually do that tonight, or do we have to wait?
Yeah,
Can't
no,
do it now.
we were asking that you take action on both the creation of the committee and the appointments this evening so that they can meet as a group, I think Thursday evening
Yeah.
with Matt and crowd while they're in town, so.
All right.
There is a resolution in the packet to create it, and then those 15 names to appoint it. Yeah, thank you.
So we need to, D1.
I'll make a motion that we authorize the creation of the Community Advisory Committee as contained in the resolution in the packet regarding our obligation under 160D.
Excuse me, I'm sorry, I misspoke. It's an ordinance in the packet. I apologize.
Yeah, consider the ordinance
The
authorized.
ordinance per 160D-306 to create a special project advisory committee.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, and now we need, consider the appointments of the, we call them the CAC, is that what we're kind of snappy little?
Community Advisory Committee.
Yeah. Because we're never going to say all those words, I just, okay.
I'll make a motion to approve the 15 names put forward for the Community Advisory Committee supplied by staff.
Second.
Pleasure of the council.
Aye.
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 Good job.
Thank you.
I'm so glad we have such an able-bodied staff. It sure is nice. All right, now we're, updates and discussion. The first is Go Pines. I thought I recognized you. Is staff going to say something, or we just, how are you? And I know we cannot, I will screw up your name, so,
I may have a few introductory comments.
yeah.
Pause for just a moment.
Sure.
On the ordinance, I believe section 2, there might be a typo. It says CAAC.
Thank you for catching that.
Okay.
We bounced back and forth between those and must have missed one.
Okay.
We'll get that corrected.
Okay, good. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Beth.
Jessica, our traveler.
Good afternoon. At the August 3rd agenda meeting, I presented the proposed lease agreement that staff had developed with Chris from Go Pines. And I know council, we then also prepared a resolution of intent to consider that lease, which you all adopted at the August business meeting. Staff has prepared the publication to advertise that as a public notice. We've put it on our website. When I presented at the August 3rd meeting, I know you all had a couple questions that staff was unable to answer because they were direct questions for Go Pines. So I asked Chris if he would be able to attend today. So he's here to answer any direct questions. And then the next step would be for the September 26th council work session. That is the date that we have advertised that you will be taking action on that lease agreement. So I will turn it over to Chris.
First, I'd like to apologize for not being here on August 3rd. I was out of town on work, so sorry you guys' questions had to wait, but go ahead and send them.
Tell us again how to pronounce your last name.
Hoppensberger?
Hoppensberger. Okay.
All right, that was simple.
Because you were probably 10 before you could say it, but still,
It did take a while.
and to spell it. Anyway, okay. Who has questions for Chris? Okay.
I have some recollection. I know there was, one question on the fee structure for electric vehicle users who would be using the charging stations. You were all were interested in what those rates would be and how those would be set. And then I know that there was another question about if the charging stations were temporarily out of service, if there would be an allowance for us to open those back up to non-electric vehicle users, and figure out a way to make that happen. So those are the two that I shared with him. But, of course, if you have other questions at this point, he's here.
Give your answers, and then that may either
Perfect.
solidify what we're thinking or lead us to another question.
Yep, no worries.
Okay.
So to start with the last question first, if the charging station is down, so each parking spot will have a EV parking only sign. If that charging station for that spot is inoperative for a period of time, that sign will be covered up to allow for parking of non-electric vehicles. My thought process behind that is should be additive to the community and not taken away. So having a open parking spot for nothing is, I think, pointless. So, so for the fee structure, so the basis for the fee is going to be the cost of electricity and the surcharge that Duke Energy puts on top for having the meter and all that. So I'm going to charge. It'll be charged by kilowatt hour. So Duke, approximately, they charge about 13 cents per kilowatt. Taking into account for the networking costs and all that on top of it, as well as the upkeep and maintenance, and then for future growth. Looking at the average within North Carolina, it's anywhere between 25 cents to 35 cents per kilowatt. And we are looking at approximately 30 cents per kilowatt while they're actively charging.
Standard car. How many kilowatts does it take to just to charge a car if it's like on zero, like super empty?
So very dependent. Depends on the vehicles. So a Tesla Model Y, which is one of the most popular EVs sold, the long range are 91 kilowatts, and the normal is about 70 to 75 kilowatts. Your normal charging, you try not to get below 10%, and most people don't charge above 80% due to battery wear and tear.
Okay.
30 cents times 70-ish is what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay.
Cheaper
Can you do
than
that really fast in your head? Are you a mathematician?
21
Okay.
bucks, 3 times 7.
Okay.
I found my question. Okay, so at the August agenda meeting, we spoke about one of the spots being a handicap accessible or handicap reserved EV charging space. Is that still part of your plan?
The one at the Reservoir Park, there is that handicap parking spot that I would like to put an EV charger next to.
Okay.
But that will not be EV charging only, but it will allow for
That's actually perfect.
ADA to park there and to be able to charge if needed.
Okay, so it is not exclusive to EV vehicles. If it's needed by a handicapped person, it's still accessible.
Correct.
Perfect.
The plan is to place a charger in the vicinity of there to where if somebody does have an EV, a handicap has EV, they'll be able to charge. If they don't, it's still a handicap spot and not reserved for EVs.
Okay, thank you.
For an average EV, miles per kilowatt?
3 miles per kilowatt,
3, okay.
approximate. Again, it varies.
A
Looking
lot of
at
3s. 3 times.
Go ahead.
Do we confirm that there would be no additional enforcement? Like our police department is not expected to be like, oh, there's a non-EV car in the EV spot. It's just, you hope people honor it and don't park gas cars in your spots, but we're not responsible for policing that, correct?
I believe that portion was taken out of the contract.
Yeah, we did address that specifically, and we noted that our police department will not be enforcing that. Go Pines would have the ability to tow vehicles or to put signs up or that type of thing to help assist with that. But I've been watching the library spots a lot since this has come up, and people really do seem to be respecting the use of those spots. So hopefully that'll be the same for these spots as well.
Yeah, I haven't seen it being a huge issue in this area, like, you will hear people complain about it in the bigger cities and all that, but I don't foresee it being an issue here.
So if I fill up my Tesla, which I do not have, but if I get my 70 kilowatts, how long would that take for that to happen?
For your
For my Tesla to refill back, for 70 kilograms?
70 kilowatts?
Yeah,
So, depending on the charging system we put in.
which
so-
you're going to know all about because we're there, right? Okay,
So I'm looking at putting in a 19 kilowatt per hour system,
okay,
so 3-ish hours.
all right.
Mine, my.
And then there's no way to notify me that my
You will-
car,
You will get a
I
notification.
will get a notification, and then how long do I have to move my car so that Doug Gill can come plug his car in?
At least 15 minutes,
Ooh,
so.
okay.
And you don't realize some people don't charge at home. This is for people, yeah.
No, that's great.
But if the car stays parked, there becomes a fee to keep it parked there.
Correct.
Okay,
It's plugged in.
So park and plugged in.
yeah.
But no, her question was, if a car,
Yes. Yeah, no, but that is what I meant. I meant to say, if they plug in, it fully charges, and then they don't unplug it and move.
Correct.
they continue to get a charge? As in, not a charge in their car, but a charge to their pocketbook? Okay,
Good clarification.
just checking on that.
One thing that we learned, and I think Chris can probably substantiate this, is that those of us who drive gas vehicles, when you go to the gas station, you tend to fill all the way up unless there's some odd reason that you're not. But it's been pointed out to me that people who drive electric vehicles, they charge them much the way we do with cell phones, where when there's an opportunity, they just quickly add a little charge. It's okay if it doesn't take it, going from 25% to 50% is okay. So, we may not expect that these people are going to be here for a long time, or that there's going to be very expensive charging rates for them. And that's one reason why we like, especially putting them in the downtown, because that attracts people to our downtown. If they know they can charge, then hey, maybe they'll go grab a quick lunch, and patronize our businesses too. So
Service that we can offer our citizens
I don't
is
know
how
if
I
you
look
have
at it.
anything more you want to add
Yeah,
to that.
so I mean, she hit the nail on the head. That's exactly, like, it's not like going to a gas station. It's more like sipping on a drink. You're taking a little bit at a time. You go to lunch, you look for a place that's located near a charger, plug in, eat lunch, and you leave. Hopefully that tops you off to the electricity you use to, to drive to lunch and then back to work or whatever it may be.
I think I asked this last time, but just want to confirm again, just in maximizing our benefit to the town, y'all had told me you determined that this leasing model was more appropriate than just saying we take a percentage of the revenues. Is that still sort of what y'all seem to think works in other places?
Yes, based on the research that we did, we felt that this was the most appropriate model. I mean, especially going into this, this is new for Chris, this is new for us. We don't really know what the potential revenues are. And so we recommend just a flat rate that allows him to budget. I mean, really, we're providing the space, he's really providing the bulk of the risk and providing the bulk of the service. And so we feel that the $25 a month per space is reasonable for what we're providing.
The other advantage to this approach, one of the challenges on anything that would have been a percentage of, is we would have been holding his financials and debating back and forth what was an acceptable thing. This was a far more straightforward means of approaching this.
If they're down for whatever reason, we're not getting anything. Unfortunately, if they're down for him, he's still paying us that lease, amount. Obviously, if it's down for a long term, for whatever reason, we'd revisit that. But this is stable for us.
Will we be the only entity that you'll be dealing with? Might there be any others in the conversation as far as offering parking spaces for?
So for this contract, it's only with Southern, with you guys, with the council. I am working with another entity for a level 3 charger in the area, which is more the fast charging. At that.
Yeah, if you have a big corporate, if you have a business and you got 80 people, you probably have a charging station there for them too.
And to approach your question from another angle, Councilman Murphy, if this is not an exclusive franchise or an exclusive agreement to operate all charging stations in Southern Pines. So if another entity were to come along with a proposal that the town council was interested in entertaining, you would have the ability to treat that as a separate agreement and take a look at whether it was something you wanted to enter into or not.
Also, just to further add on to that, the way this current lease agreement is structured, it is only for these 6 spaces. So if this is hugely successful and we agree as a town that we need more spaces and that Go Pines is the right partner, we would come back to you with a second lease agreement or whatever agreement we feel is appropriate at that point to add on additional spaces.
All righty. Sounds like just proceed with
Again, no action until
September.
same meeting next month, but if there are other questions in the meantime, by all means, forward them, and I'm sure Chris will get us some answers, but wanted to get this back in front of you well in advance of asking for any sort of approval.
Good. Thank you. Appreciate it. The next is the Welcome Center has existing lease for the town for part of the train station in order to operate the Welcome Center and the Cultural History Museum. I guess this is, the lease ends in October, so we're looking to extend their lease.
Yes, and I see Ms. Coleman is with us this afternoon, and I'm sure if there's any questions about the operations of the center, she'd be happy to respond to those. What you had in your packet was the existing lease with Welcome to Southern Pines, the 501c3. I've been working with Ms. Coleman on some draft language relative to the new agreement. Quite honestly, it looks an awful lot like the current agreement. 2 caveats to that. One, when that current agreement was entered into, there was some question around, I don't want to say there were questions around the operation because that's going to make it sound worse than it was, but just how many days of the week they were operating and how they're volunteers, because they moved from one group to another for some volunteers. And being as established as they are now with the nonprofit status not in question, what we're looking at is a 3-year agreement with 2 renewals. It will still be able to be canceled by either party along the way, but that would take it up to a 9-year total. But it's kind of a 3-year agreement with 2 3-year options. The other item that we are working toward that we couldn't put an exact number on, if you reviewed the agreement that was in your packet, you will have noted the caretaker agreement. And that was something that Suzanne brought to my office part of the way through the last agreement, where Amtrak was opening up the ability. We were doing a lot of cleaning in there anyhow, and her group was doing an awful lot of assisting of people having ticket problems, having issues with the ticket machine, those types of things. So we worked out the agreement so that the town would see some reimbursement for the time and chemicals and things being utilized in there, and that her organization would get a little bit of money to help operate because the volunteers were doing quite a bit of stuff for Amtrak. That agreement is also up in October of this year, and I know she is in contact with Amtrak directly to see what the options are relative to renewal. So depending on their response and what numbers we may be able to get out of them, that is one thing that is in the agreement that we're still trying to tidy up and get a final number on. The way this would work is if council's in general agreement that we wish to continue to have Welcome to Southern Pines operate a Welcome Center, we will get a resolution in front of you in September, very similar to what Jessica just described that we've done to date with the Go Pines agreement. We would then not act on any sort of lease until October, or potentially, depending on how quickly Amtrak can turn this around and what the opportunities are, it may be a situation where we let it kind of expire in October for a couple of weeks, not kick them out. We can continue on just an agreement, but then come back in November for adoption. I'm only suggesting November in the event that we get caught in an Amtrak schedule that doesn't allow us to deal with it in October. But the only real question in front of you this evening, or this afternoon, I guess, is one, whether you have an interest in continuing to have the Welcome Center operated out of the train station.
Yes.
And if there is anything in this language, I had run this through a number of staff members, and I think we're good with the approach and what has been occurring there. But if you see something that you have a concern with the agreement, let me know what that is, and we can try to work that out in the new lease language. So.
I guess that the obvious question is everyone fine with continuing to have the Welcome Center? I think that's a no-brainer.
As the host of a recent guest from California, I would like to say that she has declared the hats, which I've sent a picture to BJ on his email, to be the best hats in town. If you could pull up your email, BJ, you've got an email from me with a picture of the hats. And I would challenge all council members to purchase one before we approve this. Oh, man. I just sent you a pic. Anyway. not to
Because
worry.
Suzanne is here, how many people come through there roughly? Do you have,
Depending on the season, it can be up to about 600 a month.
okay. I think people would be surprised at the number.
Once we get into the season, from Autumn Fest until First Eve, we're packed because of all the parades.
Right.
Okay.
Oh, it's a phenomenal
It's
asset to
it's
the
a great
town.
thing to offer people, I think, yes.
We're seeing an improvement in traffic, as all the businesses are after the pandemic. You know, it's been a slog, both with volunteers and visitors, and everybody being extra careful, but we're seeing an uptick this summer.
Okay. It was more of a curious question, too.
I like the fact that we're extending it to a 3-year lease with the right to renew, so they're not coming back to us every year. I think that cleans it up a lot. That's great. It's a fabulous asset.
All right, so we good to continue with the lease?
There we go, the hats.
Hats. Ah,
We had, look at those. Every color you could ever want. Look at that. They're only $25, right? Right. There's one in California right now.
well, speaking of that, if you are friends with Jessica, she wore her Southern Pines sweatshirt when she was on vacation, which was awesome, and had 28387 Southern Pines. I loved
Nice.
it. It was so cool. I need to get one of those. I'll get with you because I really do have to have one of those. I know there's a light blue one.
I know. There's a, you
And
could
we
pretend
have
like
our
it was a
first game
UNC
on
hat.
Saturday.
Yeah,
Starts
there
at
you
8:15 in the evening.
There you
Holy
go.
smack. Anyway, all right,
Fabulous hats.
moving right along. We all good with renewing the lease, 3 years? Everybody fine with that? Okay. Next one is Blake Webb with Capital Commercial. I guess Blake is up.
Before Blake makes any presentation.
Ask what?
May we ask Blake some questions before?
Oh,
this
yeah,
pre-
well, I
Perfect.
let him do the presentation first.
I was wondering if we could ask questions before the presentation, please.
I think it may behoove to let them present, and then we can have a basis for the questions.
I would ask to be able to ask questions.
What do you all want to do? I've told you what I think.
Oh, are you asking council or us?
No, I'm asking council.
He has not filed an application, as far as I know. He has paid nothing to the town. This is out of our normal procedure. I would like to ask questions to set that foundationally.
I think he's just trying to see what we think.
And that which is not a part of our process.
We've done it in the past.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's probably a good time for us to have that discussion, whether we do it now or after they present, but, you know, because I have some questions as far as like, what's the best way to do this? You know, I think this forum provides a good way to do it, but we can do that whenever. I mean, if they're here, definitely, I think we can have the conversation.
I think it's important that the public understands they have not filed an application, they have not paid any money, they have not been to the planning board, they have not done anything pursuant to the process we as a town have laid out. And yet they are here to get our feedback, which means that opens the door for anybody with any idea to come in here and ask for feedback, which is a dangerous precedent. I've stated this before, we have had it done before, and I've stated the same concern. I think it's important we adhere to our own processes. It's a slap in the face to the planning department, it's a slap in the face to the planning board, it's a slap in the face to the council, it's a slap in the face to the constituents if we do this.
Appreciate the transparency of coming in front of us before you've put anything out. I think it's the idea that you want feedback, not from us, but it's obviously Evie's going to put it in the paper and you'll get feedback from the entire community. I think that that's actually a good process to have. I don't know if it makes sense to have it at a work session. I guess I'd not put that much thought into it. If our planning department feels like it's a slap in the face, then it should not have been on our agenda. I assume that they're the ones that put it on the agenda.
Well, if I could quickly address that one, because BJ and I discussed it at length, because of the conversation that took place the last time this came through. I'm not going to call it the applicant, the group before you was aware of that conversation. BJ went to great lengths to let them know of the feeling of some members of council relative to it. They asked to go ahead and come forward. So it is not as much our place as a staff to tell somebody you can't have access to council. If a majority of council this afternoon determines they'd no longer like to have these conversations in an open forum, just let staff know that, and we'll simply let them know that we are not providing access to the council in this setting at the request of town council.
And I guess,
Frogs right over planning board. It makes them impotent.
But I was thinking that,
Historically, it's been used historically in that oftentimes the stuff that comes in here is very much, I'll call it back of the napkin. And until an applicant has determined exactly what it is they may be applying for, it can very much determine what the application ends up being, whether it's a special use permit, whether it's a rezoning, whether any number of things. And sometimes a very simple change in a project might determine which application is the proper direction to go. To apply for what might initially be the wrong thing, and to learn 4 months later that, oh wait, with this change, had we just applied for the other thing, whatever that happened to have been, it has served a purpose in the past, but fully understanding your concerns relative to it. I think previous councils have felt like this was, being a public meeting, it was a transparent process, and nobody's left one of these meetings with yeah, council approves it, because I think council has always understood the devil will be in the details and what can happen to a project through the process, through the planning board, through public comment. I mean, we're watching it with the continuation of an application right now for probably 4 months. What you will eventually get on that project, I assume, is going to look very different than the application that you started with, because of mediations and all those things that have taken place. But it's a process that has functioned previously, but if we don't have it at our disposal, we'll find another way to process.
I had somebody that came before us without an applicant, and they got such negative feedback, they walked away.
And there's been
And they just said,
multiple
this is not
examples
going
of
to
that
work.
over
So they left.
over time.
So,
Yeah.
And so-
I'm not arguing for or against it. I'm simply explaining how it's been
I understand.
utilized
I
previously.
appreciate your thoughtful response.
okay.
and
Your thoughts?
also, yeah, I remembered the conversation from last time. The planning board, I don't want to put words in their mouths, but it sounded that this type thing would be helpful for them for those purposes that Reagan described.
My understanding is the planning board had advised against this.
Have they even been to the planning board?
Okay, I'm sorry, I misspoke. Not the planning board. I mean, yes.
Planning department.
The planning
department.
department, right.
The
yeah,
planning
that they mentioned. That it would be helpful for them to actually know
It would
what
be
type
helpful for
of,
anyone considering any development plan ever in the history of the world in Southern Pines to do this. Is this how we are willing to spend hours every month with plans that are not carefully thought out? It sort of negates the importance and our acknowledgement of our honoring our own planning department. The planning department has said, this is not a good idea.
Well, I didn't know they had done that because
I can see Ann's point. Yeah. I don't think that it makes sense for you all to be on the agenda and come to the meeting and then us not hear you out, because I think that would be incredibly rude on our part. But I can see how we may want to consider to not have these at our meeting.
tighten it up.
my thing is, if it's not this, like, what's our way to do that, to sort of have discussions about projects that should never come forward and get stopped early? You know, because you see here, like, there's not a 10-page memo written yet.
Right.
And if this thing doesn't go forward, well, great. Planning staff didn't spend all those hours. And I know there's an application fee, but we lose money when we combine the fee to the hours. So it's not like they're paying for the effort that's going to go into it. So I like the, I don't know, time and cost-effective way that sometimes this process. Also, what I'd also like is sometimes in the past, developers would reach out, individually to us and say, hey, can I set up a one-on-one meeting? I want to talk about this. In addition on the process, I like this way better because it's transparent and we're out here meeting and talking. So this is better than our kind of having 5 one-on-5 meetings, which, we may or may not do. But I think this is a better forum for it. But if this isn't it, I don't know how we address that to try to make sure we don't have staff spending a lot of time on projects that aren't going forward. And I've never felt like these are voting for anything because, like I said, until they present it,
Just
I have nothing to
information.
say yes or no to. But I don't know. There's probably no right answer, but just trying to find the most way to be most efficient with their time and efforts as we hear new projects. And fortunately, it hasn't been something that's come up a lot. I mean, it comes up maybe every few months or so. So it's not something that every one of these meetings we're battling this. So fortunately, it hasn't been to your point so far, it hasn't been anybody that has an idea of any thought that can come forward and talk to us about it because they haven't yet.
One that comes to mind is the one that got our feedback and drove back.
You also took a vote on that one. You called for a vote. It was a 4-1 vote in that regard.
It was a vote, do we have them move forward or not?
My understanding was
That's what it
it was a
was.
vote. If they wanted to put together their criteria for the PD that they were going to ask for, and go for it.
If there was a chance, that's it. But they withdrew. So
I
it
wasn't
was
voting on the project at all when we.
the project, just the process.
I think the way that was read in the public was there was a vote, and once you have voted to proceed,
Yeah, the
you
public
then have a dog in the fight as far as whether or not the
Public can
project succeeds.
misunderstand a lot of things and what happens up here.
I think it's important we trust the public.
Well, of course it is, Ann. Good grief. Okay, since y'all are here, are you fine with him speaking?
Oh, yeah.
Bill?
It's fine.
Okay. Will you see, yeah.
All right. Well, glad we could be the catalyst for that conversation. Hopefully, work towards some clarity. Again, we appreciate the opportunity to be here with you today. Blake Webb, Capital Commercial. With me, I've got Enrique Artega and Sean with Artega Designs. The site that we'd like to just chat with you today is right around the corner up here, at the corner of South Bennett and West New York. It's a site that has been brought to the council before. Hopefully this time we can put something there that the town's proud of. So what we're proposing is a mixed use structure, below grade parking to capture the topography that we've got there. Right now it's a beautiful hole in the ground with some kudzu that's cut back periodically. But at any rate, below grade parking, proposing about 10,000 feet of street level retail and condos above 50 is the number that we're thinking right now. Again, we feel that this project promotes all things downtown Southern Pines. Reading the UDO, or my interpretation of it, at least from Central Business, this pretty much checks every box Central Business is looking for, promoting all downtown retailers, walkability, parking on site. So again, we think that the architecture is in harmony with what's going on in existing buildings. And again, to the process, we're all local to this community. I'm born and raised. The developer's here as well. He's got a number of projects that are going on Bennett Street. He's conveyed to me that he feels he has a great working relationship with Southern Pines. And we feel like this could be an asset to the downtown corridor. So again, seeking the 30,000 foot feedback today from council, and happy to answer any questions that we're prepared to answer today.
Have you filed an application with the town for this project?
No, ma'am,
Have you paid an application fee to the town?
not at this point.
Have you met with the planning board?
No, ma'am.
Have you met with the planning department?
I've had conversation with the planning department,
Were you-
as Reagan pointed out.
Were you told during the time you met with them that this was not a good idea to come present this?
Yes.
I was told that it could be controversial.
Okay. Why did you apply to do this today? No,
Again,
go ahead.
because I wasn't told no. So.
Why did you decide to do it today? Because you weren't turned on? You weren't told no?
And historically, I've met with council before in situations just like this and had dialogue so that we could figure out the best path forward, whether there was a path or whether there was not. So I've sat in this seat before and been able to have conversation with previous boards.
Who specifically gave you information and put this on the agenda today?
I submitted the packet to the planning board, or I'm sorry, the planning department,
Okay.
which also pointed out to me that
That it was not a good idea.
that I could be challenged for sure.
Do you believe it's appropriate for any person with any idea to present their ideas to this council, subverting the process that currently is in place and mandated?
I'm not here to.
I'm asking you a question.
Opinion on that. I'm here to talk about this.
Well, you clearly have thought it's okay to bring in your idea. Do you believe, please answer my question, do you believe it is appropriate for any person with any idea to present their idea to the council while subverting the process that is currently in place and mandated?
I think I'm gonna leave that to council to discuss.
My understanding is based on tonight's feedback, either from us or from it going in the paper and being public, that you may or may not submit an application.
Is
that correct?
Application.
Okay.
Yes.
But if it goes down the way that the last time it happened, there's a chance that you wouldn't if the whole community says this is a terrible idea.
Sure.
Okay.
Understood.
So perhaps we need a way for people who are interested in contributing to our town to get that information out and float the idea, maybe not to us, but maybe to the community as a whole, in a way that, I don't know, strategically makes sense.
A review board before you get.
Yeah, or just like a place that
Not the
can be
right word.
posted.
It's planning department. We have it. It's in place.
But that's-
Those are the people who know the rules and who understand the process and are a part of that process.
But if nobody likes it, then why would they even take it to the, like, why even apply? I mean, if it goes the way that the last apartments did, in the response from the, people responding to the article, yeah, it seems crazy what does it cost to submit an application?
It depends on the application, but
Okay.
let's say this starts as a conceptual development plan for the rezoning, then it's $1,500.
Okay.
And if I'm reading this correctly, they're taking up 29 parking places on the street? We don't have 29 parking places.
Okay,
Yeah.
Please do.
so we looked at this project, and in light of recent discussion about building height, this is a 5-story building. Floor that you're seeing right here at street level on the back side with the subterranean parking. The parking is going to daylight on the back side. So if you're standing in the parking in the back of this building, you're going to be looking at 5 stories. There's 50 units, which is more than double the allowable density in the central business district. These two parcels together are 0.786 of an acre. And if you divide out the math on the density calculations like we've discussed before, that results in 22.8 dwelling units, and they want 50.
Yep.
The feedback they got from us was in light of the discussion that took place in March, not solely because there was not a town council decision back in March that they don't want to see things at work session. What came up was back in March, and I forwarded the link to the YouTube video to Mr. Webb to watch that video to get to see it for himself. The context was, hey, look, the discussion was had about a lot of density and having a request for double or more the density when we don't even have a zone that allows for that. Like you'd have to create a zone over there if you're going to do that. That was part of the discussion. Here, it's multifamily, so the only way to do multifamily pursuant to the recent text amendment. So we talked about the building heights discussion that was more recent. We talked about the issue of the text amendment that had been passed so that all multifamily now has to go through a planned development. So this has to be a planned development. There's no other way to do this. And so what we discussed was, number one, yes, we cannot deny you the right to submit something and speak to the town council about it. Like we don't hold you guys as I actually speak from a couple of experiences where someone in the planning department in the past, attempted to say, don't do this, and that went poorly as well, because it was like, well, you don't control the town council's agenda, and that was true. So we said, all right, look, for all these reasons, based on recent discussions about density, based on recent discussions about building height, based on an ongoing situation catty corner from this corner with a very, very, very large structure that we've all been dealing with. We just said, look, I just don't think it's the right time for this at all. And
You're right.
2 weeks later, it showed up in my inbox that I needed to put this on your agenda. So I don't know what else to say. I told Blake this in an email. I told him on the telephone, and that's what we're here.
There's so many things that we can't even think about approving with this design. Density is the obvious, height is the obvious. I mean, it's just, it is a beautiful design, but not there. I can tell you, I don't think that's not gonna fly. You're too tall, you're too dense, you got the tutus.
In fact, I do want to add, in fairness to Blake, another part of the conversation I had with him is that, yes, mixed-use buildings with upper-level residential and lower-level retail and commercial are a trend in towns,
Right.
not unlike ours. And that regardless of whether he came in with a beautiful design or not, it's just because of all the recent issues with building height and density and location. All three of those boxes were checked for this not being a good time to push. I think the phrase I used was not a good time to push this issue right now.
Yep,
So,
I think you should listen to your, you should listen. Yeah, well, I'm just saying that if you've heard all the other discussions that we've had about density, you've heard all the discussions about height. It is really attractive, but it's, because it's too much of, a lot of too much.
BJ, since this is sort of twofold, their presentation, but it is sort of a catalyst for us to try to figure out best practices. Why is it that we don't get this a lot, even though it seems easy? Oh, anybody can say, hey, put this before council, but we don't get that. And you said it was Mark or whatever, it's a few months back, and we maybe get, I don't know, 3-4 of these a year or so. Are y'all filter, and then it kind of stops this to where if you say this is a good idea for ABC, do you know why it is we don't get a lot of these at work session?
So since March, there have been a handful of inquiries that have come in where we've said, the work session thing didn't really go so hot last time. Let's go a different direction. Now, the directions that are available are, if you want to come through a pre-application meeting with our technical review committee, that's in the UDO. You can come through a pre-app, you can design something, you come in with the technical details, and you can kind of ferret out a design. If you come through a pre-app and we tell you, look, you're more than double the density, you're exceeding building heights, you just don't meet the zoning, then of course the only path available for multifamily is to go conceptual development plan, which is right in your own zoning, right? And then someone would go that route. Most of the time somebody comes in with an idea that not only doesn't meet the zoning, but really may not be satisfactory to current situation. We try to help them with that information and just say, hey, look, man, I think you've got something here, but maybe look at a different location, or maybe, wait for a different time. And so that usually tends to take care of most of these. We've had, we don't get them every single day quite like that, but, a couple of months come in and do on a regular basis that we get sort of somebody floating an idea. We try to advise them. If it meets the zoning, if it's by right and it meets the zoning, we tell them, you're off to pre-app and you're off to architectural review. If it doesn't meet the zoning, we say, well, you can start with a pre-app to find out the reasons why, by how much you're short of the zoning, and then maybe you can either redesign or pursue some type of zoning modification. So those are our processes that are available to them. I will point out too that the UDO does have, for things that require a conceptual development design, the UDO does have written into it something called a joint work session between the town council and the planning board together. It's written right into the UDO, and it's called a joint work session, and that way you have both entities there to provide feedback.
I mean, maybe it's something to consider as we are trying to redevelop CLRP and UDO. I mean, if that would be a way to, I'm absolutely not trying to cut the planning board out of this process at all, and I don't see that we are, because nothing's been proposed, but if that would be a way to effectively sort of do this in a public forum without a bunch of one-on-one meetings, I think that'd be great. So as we're developing those plans, remember to let us know about that.
In other jurisdictions where I've worked, the idea of workshopping a larger development project, something that Workshopping is a fairly normal thing. It's always done in an open setting. But it's done more commonly with the planning board to workshop something, and sometimes the council's involved. But that joint work session, right now it's written into the UDO as an option for plan development. So if you don't have to do, if you're not going to do a plan development, you don't have to do a plan development. We can do it.
So we could take that language out of plan development and still, because the idea of a joint work session seems to make a lot of sense to me. Just to,
So technically, this is not above our height restrictions.
Yeah, depending upon the overall height of this building as measured from the front, wherever they claim the front is, then the overall building height in an OS, it can't go through as an OS. It just can't, you can't do multifamily in an OS. So while it's noteworthy to know that it wouldn't meet it may not meet the 45-foot standard right now. I don't know if it does or doesn't at the front there. It's got a flat roof. But regardless, it has to go through as a planned development. So it's only sort of interesting to know what the underlying OS standards may be.
Yeah, and I think that, and I think BJ touched upon this, but said it a different way when you ask why you don't see this every month. An awful lot of the stuff that comes in is already in zoning districts where that pre-development process at the TRC is very straightforward. We don't get a lot of big mixed-use buildings, for better or worse. This isn't a project that we see once a month, and therefore you don't either.
My understanding, although the hotel did not adhere to this, was that the front door would be at the street, like where, I mean, I thought our code said the highest traffic.
This instance, but
Okay.
again, that's
Okay.
speculation.
I mean, it's a shame that this kind of thing can't go where they want to go. I mean, I think it looks far better than a lot of the stuff that has come to us. My understanding is from somebody who lives above their business, that's what a lot of people want to do, is they want to live and work and stay downtown. And it has parking, which is also another issue we've come across with applicants. So yeah, I would like a place for this to be workshopped, this type of thing. But it's a shame if this doesn't fit.
yeah, because my office I'm one of those offices that are below and people do live above where I am. And so I have the reverse of what you have. And
I feel like this fits the
and it's a
character
great,
that we
but
keep
it's
talking
not
about.
the magnitude of this. This is just a lot. And
The kind of thing that in a year or 18 months following your CLRP process, this is a completely different discussion. Because it may be determined that exactly everything you just said.
I mean, I would like,
Or it may not.
and it's the same thing that happened the last time we ran into this workshopping at an agenda meeting. I like it because it goes in the paper and I want to know what people think. I mean, our job is to make a recommendation or a vote based on what our constituents think. So however we need to get it out, we need to figure
when
out a
Marcel
system.
brought it, I don't remember it being that large either.
Again, he was in the initial phases, so he was seeking feedback from council at that point, but.
I'd have to go back and look. It may have been larger because if you recall, he was talking about bringing a parking deck out over top of the existing town parking as one of the concepts he kind of floated. So I think it might have even been a little larger.
I think it was larger actually too, because he was not accommodating 70% impervious of the watershed protection overlay. And so these guys with their site plan, they are showing that. I think the site has always been an issue of parking.
Right.
To provide off-street parking, you kind of have to go subterranean with it. To
Right.
capitalize the cost of subterranean parking, you got to go vertical with a lot of
You got to pay.
a lot of stuff to offset that cost.
You got to pay for it.
From street, we're at 40 feet.
Yes, sir.
Right.
That's 40 feet.
Yes.
With the fifth floor off the back.
Well, subterranean.
I don't
Parking.
think that's 40 feet. Interstitial height and tall
It's-
ceiling.
what he's
Your
talking-
retail is going to at least have a minimum 10-foot ceiling, minimum. And they probably want 12, right?
You've got 4 floors here plus a fifth.
Got 3 floors plus that other floor. That's.
Yeah.
Don't you count that other?
This looks to me like the 4th floor.
Yeah, you count that too. So that. Well, I think you got your. I think you go ahead.
Sorry, Enrique Artiga here. First of all, thank you for your time and for your feedback. This is actually very important. it's Blake is over here presenting, he's representing Ascot Land Development. It falls upon me to figure out how I'm gonna make this work.
Okay.
Because I've already been hired to make it work and make it look good, so. And I agree, it's a beautiful building, and I think that's something that Southern Pines can use and can need. So what I'm hearing right now is that if we reduce the height and the density, maybe this is something that we could consider. Is that what I'm hearing? Because the main thing that the concern that I heard a lot was height and density, height and density. So if we make it shorter,
Yeah.
and obviously if we make it shorter, that will reduce the number of units that we will have in there.
Because your density is what, 22.8?
That's what it would be. Under the rules.
And it's a whole,
50.
they're
Double.
50.
22 units would be allowed.
Right, but, yeah, right, and you've got 50, I mean, you're not even close.
Yeah, and
More than double.
And this is something that I can bring back to the, because one of the questions that Colin Webster asked me to ask you guys, if not that, what? What can we do? How can we fill up that hole in the ground?
Trust our planning department and let them guide you.
Which I agree with you. We do listen to BJ. We talk to him all the time in other projects as well. But I guess what we're expecting is exactly what you guys are doing right now, which again, I appreciate very, very much that you are giving me that feedback. So, and I'm listening and I'm writing things down. And now I can come up with an answer for Colin, so.
Shrink it.
Shrink it. So if we shrink it, let's say like, if we shrink it, would that be something, yeah, would that be something
Sign
desirable?
is really attractive.
Well, thank you.
And the idea is really a good idea, to have retail below and housing above. I mean, it really is. It's just that it's
Too much.
too much of a good thing.
I thank you, thank you. I
And
appreciate it.
until we see the formal application with the PD specs, as far as what you're asking for, it's impossible to
Yeah.
give any kind of indication as to where it would go.
That's right.
We got the 30,000 feet
Okay.
for that, we appreciate you.
Yeah, it's hard to get some kind of feedback when there's like, hold on, I just can't do it because, just can't do it. Oh, okay,
Now you know why.
but now I know why. And so again,
You
very
probably were
much.
told why you couldn't do it by this gentleman.
Yeah,
right
we'll
here.
also direct you why, right.
Yeah, you
You're
probably already,
told, let's not bend the rules, let's follow the rules, and let's adhere to what the planning department says.
very good. Thank you.
Appreciate it very much. Thank you for your time.
Sure thing. The next is creating a school zone for Southern Pines Elementary. Staff,
right.
whose
Yeah,
staff is
it's
sharing?
This is me. The next two items on your agenda, I had sent all of you a list that had come out of the Community Connectors last month, and I see Dorothy's with us this afternoon. Hello, Dorothy. We actually, Rachel and I had a very, I think, very positive and productive meeting with the connectors last week of about 3 hours, just going through that list and getting a better understanding of what was being requested. And I think it was a good exchange, and I think we all know a little bit better about where everyone's coming from. And it is a little bit different than you might infer from just reading the words. So again, took an awful lot out of that meeting. The two items before you this afternoon are relatively straightforward ones, but they are very much policy decisions. One of the items that was on that list was the creation of a school zone at Southern Pines Elementary, which I think is kind of a no-brainer.
Yeah, why was that? I was just asking him, why was that not
So
done?
Corey's got the signs on order. Well, first of all,
It seems
the
like,
road had to be completed and
yeah.
dedicated, but honestly, I can't help but think it was just somewhat of a miss, even by the school,
Yeah,
oddly
because that
enough.
doesn't make any sense to me.
But
Okay, well, that's, you're
I
right.
think we
that's
can
a
get the school
no-brainer.
zone created if council is in agreement.
Yes.
The real question, it does take a specific resolution or ordinance in order to do that under North Carolina General Statute. If everyone is in agreement to do it, we'll get that drafted up and ready for your upcoming September meeting.
One in agreement for that.
And your suggestion for the 25 seems fine
My
to me.
next point is everybody comfortable with a 25? You can go as low as 20 under the state law, but I think all of the school zones we're familiar with in the area are 25 and Chief Polidori thought it was best if we tried to remain consistent with that. So that one was
Was
easy.
there a request from Community Connectors? Are they okay with 25? Yes. Okay, there we go.
I don't think we had that, I didn't have that data when we met Wednesday night, but. Thank you, Dorothy.
Good.
The second one seems even more straightforward, but it's the kind of thing that I suppose might generate a lot more conversation. There was a request that the Douglas Community Center be recognized in its name as the E.S. Douglas Community Center, and I'm actually quite glad Dorothy is here because she gave a very good explanation as to why the request when we all met last Wednesday
forward.
evening. This would take nothing more than, in fact, I don't know that it even would necessarily take a resolution or ordinance, but I'm going to recommend maybe we do that in September just for sake of making it easily searchable in the future for those that are trying to look back and determine it.
Just the Douglas Center at the beginning. Why did they put his whole name?
Yeah, and I've not been able to dig up in minutes.
Like here, like
exactly-
Bourne, or here, like in town?
I was in Durham.
I can't find in the minutes where that was officially named, which is why I'm suggesting doing it a little more formally
Yes.
made
Okay.
to do so.
I can say I was here when Southern Pines celebrated, was it the 100th? And Jug Douglas was the mayor at that time. We took lots of pictures with him. Emmanuel S. Jug Douglas is an icon, remains. He was, of course, the first African-American mayor for Southern Pines. He was a public servant of the state of North Carolina for many years, has been honored at his alma mater, North Carolina A&T State University, as E.S. Emmanuel Jug Douglas. And because of the historical perspective and because of our obligation as community connectors to enhance our community and add value to what we have already, we cherish the Douglas Center as we cherished him. He was a very good and faithful family friend. There's also a group that calls itself the Douglas Society or whatever, and there has been an occasion where they tried to infer that they were connected with Mayor Douglas. I'm not sure, are you familiar with that, Reverend Murphy?
Yeah, I am. In fact, it's as if they've co-opted the Frederick Douglass, who was actually a member of the AME Zion Church.
Yeah.
Into another politicized entity.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
morphed into.
This is just taking that, clarifying
Clarifying.
this Douglas is and what that Douglas is.
Exactly.
Because they were here in Southern Pines at one point meeting at the Douglas Center, and it was very confusing to people. And but more so, and we know he is. There's a plaque, but the plaque is not seen from the street. But for historical purposes, and I think for anything else we have in this town, that we need to clarify who this person is, and it's a historical purpose that we want to do this, but it's also for many of us a personal reason why we want to make sure that he is memorialized.
Okay.
Politics aside, not dissimilar to what Moore County Schools dealt with the Robert E. Lee
Robert E. Lee,
Auditorium a
that's
few years
exactly the
back,
same,
and
yeah.
just verifying.
His daddy.
Yeah. And my superintendent for a long time.
I'm glad you mentioned that plaque. This reminded me, it's real interesting. If y'all haven't read it, it's right by the front door walking in, but it's still there. I was trying to remember if it was only there when it was green or if it stayed through the.
It stayed
Siding
through
change,
the
okay.
through the side, yeah.
Transformation.
It either stayed or they took it down and put it back. But like I said,
Okay.
he remains an icon in Moore County history and in state history with his university and with all the service that he provided to juvenile boys and girls.
To me, these two things are no-brainers. So,
And if I could just add, in reflection, he is one of three only family members I've ever known on my father's side, since it was his aunt Josephine who pulled my father out of eating out of trash cans.
that always makes me cry.
Yes,
Serious.
Yeah,
And,
yeah.
and he sat there, and it also underscores the significance of what could easily be perceived as a bias when we speak of historical areas, as in this side of town, and that
Yes.
side is not historic. There are some opportunities to celebrate, to really, so thank you.
Yeah, he and his wife did not have children. And at some point, I can share with you some, I was just looking through photograph books that my dad has of Cameron Morrison Training School and the impact that that reformatory school had on hundreds of boys. And it was a full-fledged, you might say, college campus for juvenile delinquents that offered education as well as job opportunities, job training. So, but anyway, I'm a history major. I could go on and on and on, but this is what we want to do for Jug Douglas.
Sounds good, I think. So what do we need to do from here?
So I'll gladly get a resolution prepared for your September meeting. Dorothy, you just gave a lot of great facts about Emmanuel. Do you have a write-up or a link you can point me to just for purposes of whereases on that resolution? And you don't have to have an answer right now, but if... Okay.
Because
Fantastic.
he was the child in the house with them.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Thank you.
And Beth is the queen of whereases. She is the whereas queen.
That's exciting.
She's the whereas queen, and that's hard to gracefully say without screwing up. Okay. I think everyone's good for those two things. Okay. Need a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Hi.
And I want to add that the meeting with Reagan and Rachel the other night was the length of a town council meeting, but better.